welcome to Policing TV, where I'm joined by Gary Callier. I'm delighted, Gary, to have you talking with us. We've recorded something about your policing and military career to date, and also about the formation of the thinking that led to your setting up the Police UK Disability Sport Community Interest Group. Let's now get into that detail about the police disability sport. What was your thinking on setting up this community interest group?
Thank you, Bernard. So, I was looking at the sports that are available in the police community, and I suppose the dream was to try and replicate the impact that the Invictus Games has through Royal British Legion, Help for Heroes, and all the other charities that get involved in it, to try and replicate that support network for the police community, because there was nothing until we set this up in November. So we're now working with a lot of police charities and organisations to look at the support that we can give, and one of those is through sports recovery. The Invictus Games is a 24-month rotation, but actually when you look at breaking that down, it actually runs for 12 months at a time with a 12-month break. So in that 12-month break, the people that are selected and those that are looking for selection don't have actually any other adaptive sport unless they go into the National League. So we wanted to not just replicate a games or competition on an annual basis, but then also provide that regular sports recovery outside of the games. We don't want to just have a selection process where 10-15% are successful and the other 85-90% get left by the wayside with no outlook or support or mechanism for the services that they need through sports recovery. So we'll be setting up national leagues for various sports. So we'll get that year-round competition, and on top of that, we'll have a selection process for a home nations competition, where we'll have England, Scotland, Northern Ireland, and Wales competing a couple of times a year in all these sports, meeting up and going for a tournament-style setup on that. And then above that, we'll have a selection process for those that would be interested in what we'll call the elite level, because we're building Paralympic pathways in various national governing bodies. But we'll be looking at a Team UK structure, very much like the Invictus process, for officers and staff who want to compete at that top level to go up against international police disabled sports teams. So we're working with the International Police Association at the minute to develop the first international police games for adaptive sports. And that might come as early as summer of 2025, which will be 3.5 years ahead of our schedule. But when we actually look at the data involved in a Team UK setup, we need far less numbers for Team UK than we do for all of the regions to get set up in a national league. For example, wheelchair rugby, we only need probably 8 or 10 players for Team UK, whereas to set up a national league, we need at least 3 teams, so we need at least 30 players for that, and that's just that one sport. However, we are very close. We are looking to set up the National League for wheelchair rugby as early as September of this year. Wheelchair basketball will closely follow that, possibly in the new year, and then sitting volleyball is a little way behind that. We'll also look at the athletics, badminton and table tennis tournament structure for the new year, as well as start developing our interest in other sports like indoor rowing, powerlifting, archery, and a few others. But yeah, for now, it's just about building the member base to get people involved. So we're doing a lot of exhibition matches. We're getting involved in a lot of tournaments. We're engaging with all community clubs. We're not short of offers, but what we are short of are finances to be able to get to venues and get equipment. But we're engaging with police forces, federations, other charities, and the Home Office to sort of see where we can go to get additional support. We're asking police forces and federations that are also struggling funding-wise. We're asking them, look, if you're not able to financially support us, what other ways can you support us? Do you have sports halls, facilities that we can use? Do you have accommodation when you have training courses that people attend that are accommodation is free on the weekend? Are we able to use those and use the sports facilities so that those are costs that we don't have to find? So the little money that we do generate, we can then use for expenses for players to get to these venues, because sport, and especially adaptive sport, is seen as a luxury by a lot of organisations, whereas actually it's the only way that some people can get health, fitness, support, and services through mental and psychological well-being. So it's actually vital. It's not a luxury, but actually everyone involved in adaptive sport is self-funded unless you can go through charities. But the biggest problem we have in the police community is that when we look at other charities, being an armed forces veteran as well, I can see both sides of the coin, is that armed forces charities are not only supported financially through government and the Ministry of Defence, but they're also supported through public donations as well. Now, we're not saying that the public support going to war or overseas operations, but the public are generally supportive of those that come back from overseas operations with horrific injuries, PTSD, and they will help with financial donations through Royal British Legion, Help for Heroes, and the other armed forces charities. Whereas police officers don't have that same level of community support. You know, the public pay for the safe policing of their communities through their taxation, through the government. So they expect the police forces and federations and police charities to look after their own. Unfortunately, the police charities don't get any funding through the government, and the federations have, you know, their support mechanisms going. But actually, police officers and staff are having to pay salary sacrifices to pay into things like the police treatment centres for psychological sessions. You can get help through the federation, but that's limited. So we're actually working with police charities and the treatment centres at the moment to offer free online remote sort of physio and psychological health and wellbeing sessions as well. We had a meeting with the charities that form Police Charities UK a little while ago, a few weeks ago, at Flint House, one of the police treatment centres. And there was also a representative from the Home Office. So we posed the questions, you know, are we able to access any government funding? And the short answer is basically no, there's nothing there, but they are looking at ways maybe that they can support. So we've come away from that meeting and started looking at ways that we could access money that's already there, not asking the public for any money and not asking the government to assign or allocate any money from the public purse. So I suppose the obvious option when we started looking at it was the Proceeds of Crime and Property Act funds, because these funds are built on money that has been seized through criminal activity. And the statistics that we've looked at from 2018 to 2023 alone are eye-watering. 2023 alone, £339.1 million was seized in a 12-month period. And from what we can see from the report, very little, if 0% basically, went to supporting police officers and staff through recovery, rehabilitation and treatment. We have recently received a letter from the Home Office that £3 million gets allocated each year for police welfare services. But so far, we're unable to find where that goes, how that gets allocated. And for example, one of the police treatment centres out of the four, their turnover is sort of, their expenses at £6 million a year, and that's just one treatment centre. There are 28 charities in Police Charities UK. A lot of them are operating currently at a loss. And they provide services still free to officers. So yeah, we looked at what can we do. So we asked the Home Office, can we get access to proceeds of crime money? Simple answer again was no. We've engaged with police forces that have their own POCA funds and things like that. So again, we need to engage with all of the 43 Home Office forces individually to gain access to any funding. Now, the one, I suppose, barrier that all of these police charities have are they're all national. So they support police officers and staff all over the UK. And because of that, regional police forces are, I wouldn't say unwilling, it's very difficult to get regional financial support from a police force when you're a national organisation. So we've set up the Parliamentary Petition, which in very short terms is asking the government to allocate money from the Proceeds of Crime Act fund a percentage each year, which is taken off the top before money goes back to the forces, so that it becomes a national sort of funding program. And then all of the police charities and not-for-profit organisations can then make applications to this POCA fund for supporting the officers and staff that they provide services to. On top of that, we are working with all of the police forces at the moment, and we are getting positive engagement back. And that's where you'll see on the petition map little pockets of little support coming out. For example, Northern Ireland, where we're working with Brookhouse, the treatment centre there, Mercia West Midlands, you've got Merseyside that have come out recently and post on social media and internally as well. Norfolk and Suffolk, you've got Hampshire coming out now, and Kent, and Leicestershire, Northamptonshire. But we're trying to engage with all of these forces. And what we've done to try and help with the financial funding from the forces is to divide the country down for our sports regions, basically, which we're basing on the Home Office, what we know as the super forces, those forces that are grouped together for their policing strategies and their funding from the Home Office. So we're basing our regional sports teams on that same structure. So we're looking at 14 regions, and those teams will compete against each other in the National League. So we're now putting in applications for individual grants from these forces through the Property and Proceeds of Crime Act, which sometimes are managed by Chief Constable, sometimes are managed by the Police Crime Commission, sometimes by the Mayor's Fund. So it's a process of dealing with 43 Home Office forces, but we could be dealing with over 100 separate applications at any one time. But it's securing that money within that region. So we're currently working with West Yorkshire on a grant application, and that money will go towards events, sports, and putting on games in West Yorkshire. But if we can engage with the other Yorkshire forces that fall within that region, and we can combine that money, we can do so much more. We'll be able to get the equipment, the wheelchairs, the balls, the support that we can in place to create that regional team that can go on to that National League setup.
Thank you so much for explaining for Policing TV about the support and opportunities for adaptive sports in the police community.
Thank you, Bernard.